Hello crafty friends, I'm Lien from Studio Cato and I'm so glad you're joining me again today. Today I'm sharing a card to start a series on my YouTube channel called Casual Fridays, where I make a cast card every Friday, or at least the Fridays I can actually stick to this. I cut these hello dies by A Pocket Full of Happiness from thick white cardstock to use as stencils. These come with a base layer. So that's the first stencil I showed you, and this one with all the purple tape on the back cuts an outline and a scripty word die, and I taped the outline into the negative space. This way when I use it as a stencil, I will end up with the scripty word stenciled on my card. So I'm going to make this one another rainbow card. I'm slightly obsessed with rainbows lately, but you can't go wrong with rainbow colors on a card, so now it's time to stencil. I basically made my own little layering stencil set. The panel that I'm working on is Clairefontaine DCP 250 GSM cardstock, and I die cut it with the Scalloped rectangle frame dies by Pinkfresh Studio. And I'm blending a rainbow of hellos on there using some Pinkfresh Studio inks and a blending brush. I'm moving the hello around for each color. I'm not just moving it down a little bit, but I'm also moving it side to side so I can have some variation in the background, and this will fill it up more nicely. I'm also overlapping the different hello words. This will leave me with less white space, which is exactly what I wanted. The color selection that I'm using right now is my favorite combination for rainbow colors, and these are all by Pinkfresh Studio. I will list them all in the description below. Now once I'm done with the first layer, I can move on to the second layer. And you can see that inside of the O, I saved that. I put some temporary adhesive on the back, and that will make sure I can stencil in a nice O that's just as white as the rest of the letters on the second layer. I'm using darker shades this time around, and that will make them stand out nicely and make them really legible. Now, as you can see, when I peel away that O, it leaves a little bit of adhesive. That's perfectly fine. I will solve that at the end. Now, the way I'm lining this second layer up is not perfect at all, but it worked for me. I just placed the O, the inside of the O, correctly on the first layer, and then I shifted the second layer stencil around that. And that gave me a nice result most of the time. I'm finishing this up with my favorite purple ink, the Regal Kiss, and then one more stenciling of the Tidal Pond ink, and the background will be done. The plan for today's card was a happy mail card. That's why I went with happy bright colors. And I'm using some envelope stamps as well. And that's also why I use this die. The scalloped frames will leave the inside piece with an inverted scalloped edge. And that has that postage stamp look to it that I love. Now I'm just using an adhesive eraser to get rid of all that tape that was left. And then I can move on to the focal point. I'm using a stamp set by the Stamp Market. It's called Just a Little Message, and I'm stamping an image from that on vellum with Versamark and embossing that in Wow Bright White Superfine Embossing Powder. I used the sentiment from that same stamp set to stamp a sentiment strip, and I'm layering a couple of layers of black cardstock behind that to give it some dimension. This sentiment stamp is one of my favorites. I'm not sure if I've used it in a video yet, but I do use it a lot. It's very versatile, and it has a really neutral font, so it fits any card design. Now I'm just figuring out the placement of my little envelope, and I decided to adhere it at an angle to give it a little bit more movement. You know I love dimension in my cards, so I'm layering, I think it's 6 layers of thick white cardstock behind my scalloped panel to prop it up onto my card base. Layering cardstock together instead of foam tape gives a more sturdy finish to your card, and it will hold up well in the mail. It is considerably heavier than foam tape though, so if you do a lot of layering, you might end up paying a little bit more for postage, but I think it's worth it. And I'm centering that onto my card base, and then I can adhere my focal point in place. And I don't think my focal point is actually my focal point. I made it from Vellum so I could show off the background. So that's really the star of this show. I adhered the sentiment strip onto the envelope first, and then I knew exactly where to place my foam tape. I like to adhere vellum elements like this, so they float up a little bit from the background and stand out a little more. Now to finish this card, I am using some Majestic Confetti by Studio Katja to add some embellishments. I wasn't really planning on doing any embellishments for this card, but I got a few little ink spots where I didn't want them, so I'm trying to cover those up with see-through sequins. So not sure what my plan was there, but it does take the intention away a little bit from my mistakes. I'm adhering them with a jewel picker and Barely Art Precision Craft Glue, and that finishes up the card. But since you know me, you know I'll make a matching envelope at the end of the video. I'm using a light gray cardstock here and following the instructions on the punch board to make an A2 sized envelope. I will reinforce the score lines with my bone folder, and then I can add some envelopes on my envelope. I'm stamping an image from that same stamp set 3 times with Versamark ink onto my envelope and embossing that in white. I love the look of white embossing powder on soft gray cardstock. It's really subtle but really nice and fun. Just adhering the envelope together, and that's it. A fun casual Friday card with a matching envelope. I hope you like Happy Mail cards as much as I do, and I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to read them. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.